everyone, and welcome back to the second and final part of my body language analysis on John and Patsy Ramsey. So I hope that you all are thoroughly enjoying the holidays as we move into the new year. I decided to make these videos showcasing the Ramseys after one of my viewers named Annetta S. suggested I do an analysis on the Ramseys. So thank you, Annetta. I am also so grateful to every single one of you for sharing interest in watching my videos, hitting the like button, subscribing, commenting, and sharing. I enjoy interacting with all of you and hope that we can continue to do so. I did receive some constructive criticism asking me not to repeat myself in the videos because I tend to get stuck on one thing and just repeat myself. So I apologize for that. I will no longer do that, and I am still working on perfecting my delivery for you all. So without further ado, let's get right back into the interview with journalist Paula Woodward.
Well, I would take it out with a great flourish, but I need to get it out of that tablet. Hold on a second. I just think it would be helpful if you could hear what you know about it.
So Patsy is putting her sort of nervous energy or energy of not wanting to even read what this woman has for her to see. She's sort of putting it into her hands. If you notice, she had her hands cuffed and she was cuffing them together, and she kept pressing her hands together, and she's putting the energy a little bit into her feet, and it's very little. They're controlling their body language very well, but they don't want to have to see this right now.
Right.
Thank you.
So Patsy asked for the water because if you did check out part 1 of my body language analysis on the Ramseys, you did hear me say that John licks his lips a lot or whatever, and he's probably trying to readjust what comes out of his mouth and make sure that like a whistle or something doesn't come out. It could have something to do with their mouths being dry and needing some water as well.
One of the most unusual parts of this has been this ransom note, and I know that you've seen it several times, but would you go over it with us and tell us what you know and what you've been told about it?
Well, first of all, this is what is going to help us convict the killer. This is 3 pages of handwritten writing samples of the killer. We've been told by experts that if we have a suspect and we get sufficient samples of his writing, they will be able to tell conclusively with this much of a sample that the person wrote that note. So this is a huge...
So when the journalist asked him, can you tell me what you know about this? And before he began to answer, he took an inhale, a deep inhale, breathed in, and then a deep exhale, breathed out. He might have been mentally prepared almost to answer a question about this or answer this question, something similar to this question. And also he started to speak in a very matter-of-fact tone and tell it like it is to him. This is how it is to him and what he experiences and what he knows. And that is the way in which he answered the question, and that is the way in which he's continuing to answer. And then he takes off his glasses as if to almost say, I don't need to look at this. He's almost probably has a feeling or is thinking, I don't need to look at this anymore. I know what this is. I've seen it. And, I can look at you straight in the eye and give you a matter-of-fact answer about this.
Clue. Why it was left, I don't know.
And let me just interject at this point. Mrs. Ramsey, it's my understanding that the Colorado Bureau of Investigation took your handwriting samples to the Secret Service. Do you know the results of that test? Definitively?
No, I don't. No, we had experts do the same kind of testing, and it's my understanding that the people that we use trained the people from the CBI, Colorado Bureau, that administered the tests. And they, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being absolutely no match. I ranked at a 4.5, with 1 being a perfect match.
So that is accurate, actually. The way that she moved her hand up and down to show a scale almost to tell the journalist how far in the scale up or down she was to be a perfect match for the handwriting of this ransom note. She's doing that, and she's bringing her hand up and showing that through her hand to emphasize her what she's saying. And also what she is saying is factual, because there was and I'm not too sure when the journalist asked her if she knew something about what the score was or whatever, or knew something about what the police probably were saying about the score from this handwriting test, and her, this handwriting test they gave her, and her handwriting versus the handwriting of the ransom note. She might know a little bit of something about that, about her score, or about what the journalist was asking her when she was saying, no, I don't really know. I think that she might know a little bit of something about it, actually. And there was a man named, there was a suspect, a man who was considered a suspect. His name was Gary Merriman. He was another suspect who worked for Access Graphics, which is the same company that John Ramsey worked for, Jon Benet's father, obviously. And he worked with John Ramsey. He also worked as a psychologist in criminal justice for 14 years. I think he worked in like the prison system or something like that as well. So doesn't that type of career make him seem like he would be good at writing a ransom note that could confuse the police and detectives? Because he had a career in psychology, and he worked as a psychologist in criminal justice. Seems like he would be good at writing a confusing ransom note. And Gary Merriman, when he gave all of his handwritten samples to the people who asked for it, whether it was the police, DA, I'm not sure, they asked him for at least 6 or 7 samples, and he scored higher on the likelihood that he was the person who wrote the ransom note. He scored higher than Patsy. The handwriting analysis test was higher, and that's very interesting and cannot be overlooked. And there's something about this Gary Merriman suspect that has something to do with the number 118, and he has something to do with $118,000. I can't quite remember what it was, but I'm not sure if the company owed him that or what was going on. I think that he helped to start the company with John, actually.
We know.
Yeah, we don't know the results of the police testing. We've heard that they're at best inconclusive.
The governor said this morning on national TV that you've seen all the evidence in the case.
We
I
have
would
not
be
seen
desperate.
all the
If there is evidence we haven't seen, I would ask the governor to please let us see it. Please let our investigators see it.
What is it that you want to do with regard to this case?
What we are desperate to have happen now, we've gone for 3 years, only my family's been investigated. The grand jury refused to indict us, and it takes very little evidence to indict someone.
So the Boulder Police Department left many stones unturned, and that is something that law enforcement just should never do. They refuse to investigate many different things and a few different people who should have been considered suspects. And even when they did investigate these people, they didn't do a thorough job. So that's one aspect of it. And the other thing is, let's see here. If you can't even count on the people who you are supposed to call when a crime has been committed, then who can you call? Who can handle a crime scene if the police can't, and if they're insufficient, and if they're unprofessional, which they were? So that probably plays into the Ramseys hiring, good attorneys, good private investigators, detectives, and so on and so forth, because they were looked at as suspects, and no one else was taken seriously as suspects. And that is hard to deal with just as a human being. They can't trust in law enforcement, so all they can, they even, whoever else they would hire, like attorneys or private investigators or whatever, weren't there when the crime was committed and couldn't collect any evidence or tell all the people to get out of their house, the friends that they brought over right after they hung up with 911, or right after the 911 call. So if no one's going to be sufficient enough and be professional enough to do their job here as far as police and detective work goes, then who the hell can you call? See what I'm saying? And as far as the 911 call goes, I did want to say that if most people who are listening to me now have heard the 911 call, and I want to say if you haven't, you should go listen to it, because to me, the emotion in Patsy Ramsey's voice when she called 911 is not something that you hear often, and it is something that even an award-winning actress like Nicole Kidman or something could not pull off, because her breathing is incredibly panicked throughout the whole call. You can hear, it's almost like you can hear the anguish and the panic in her voice as a mother. And there are some people listening right now who know the feeling even, and have had the feeling or the experience before with maybe their child. They thought the child was missing, or they thought maybe somebody had taken the child, and they know that feeling of their heart wanting to jump out of their chests and feeling like they're going to die, and the breathing, the heavy and everything. So anyone who has experienced that, it's not hard to hear that in Patsy's voice and to recognize that, I wouldn't think.
All we've done is gotten back to the beginning, but we don't want it to be the end. I'd like for political ambitions to be put aside. I'd like for egos to be put aside. There are no apologies needed, but let's get on with an investigation. Let's staff this investigation with seasoned, experienced homicide investigators, the best we can find, the best we can.
How do we know that it's just because you don't like the outcome of what Boulder police have decided, that you're under an umbrella of suspicion, that you just want another chance?
They can investigate us. If the governor would put together a seasoned investigative team to start over, go back through all the leads, all the evidence, we'd
They
be
can start
fully
all over
cooperative.
again. Right.
And they can investigate us again if they want. That's fine. But please don't just investigate us, because if you do, we're never going to find the killer.
There is lots of evidence. There is a lot of evidence.
The Boulder police did a wonderful job of collecting evidence. Thank goodness.
And that doesn't change. Evidence is evidence. We've got it.
We've got
But we
DNA
need
that
to
hasn't
follow
been
the
identified.
evidence and do some follow-up investigating, not just dead end with John and Patsy Ramsey.
Let's go with the ransom note.
So the nodding forward of Patsy's head and neck when she said we need to follow the evidence and follow this and that, she was a little bit, once again getting annoyed and getting to the point where she wanted to state exactly what she thought that they need to do to solve this case.
What do you know, what have people told you about phrasing or anything else in the ransom note?
Well, there's obviously a couple of references, I think, to something that people think came from a movie, couple of movies, which would lend one to think that it might be maybe a younger person who.
The way that Patsy had a little bit of a dimple show up in her upper cheek when she said a movie, has me thinking that they don't watch a lot of movies. They're not people who watch a lot of movies. And I do know that I was speaking about the Santa Claus suspect, and his name is Bill McReynolds. I was speaking about him in the first part of this video that I did. And I think that that he and his wife were people who did watch a lot of movies. And it's like I said, their daughter was kidnapped 22 years before Jon Benet Ramsey was killed. And the daughter was kidnapped, I believe, the same day, the day after Christmas. So it's very eerie, and it's too much of a coincidence for me. And there are suspects who have too many coincidences and too many things that are, just eerie and suspect that goes right along with that person. So for me, that with Bill McReynolds is suspect. Him and his wife, I think they watch movies, like I said. And his daughter was kidnapped the day after Christmas, 22 years before Jon Benet was horribly murdered. So, and I do know that his daughter was not sexually molested during the process of being kidnapped, but her friend was. So the person or persons kidnapped Bill McReynolds' daughter and her friend. And only the friend was molested. To me, that's fishy. To make it's almost like he orchestrated it, or he did it. Speaking about Bill McReynolds, and then made sure that his daughter wouldn't be the one who was molested or anything like that, and the friend would be. And then this thing happens, and then there's a lot of things that are suspicious surrounding him already. So people who know the case will know what I'm talking about here. Let's just say that you believe that someone in the house, meaning somebody in Jon Benet's family, was responsible for her death. Well, that still doesn't explain the fact that there were a few different people who had too many things occurring with them that couldn't just be coincidental. There were just too many things going on that just pointed to too much, and too much knowledge about the Ramseys and different, things that should have been considered evidence. And when there's too much coincidence, there is not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence at all. And so I do want to say that when you're a crime scene investigator and you're a police officer and all that, you should know how to secure a scene. And if you see, something sitting on the table, such as pineapples and milk, like they said was on the table in a bowl, don't you know how to at least, if you're not going to secure that and take it in as evidence or whatever because it's food and you don't want to do that, or whatever the procedure is, then why don't you at least write it down and say, yeah, it was pineapple and milk. Why later on it's like, we don't know what it was, and we don't know, and everything got thrown away, or everything is gone now. It's like, that's not what you're trained for, and you should know better as a criminal investigator and crime scene investigator and all that. Horrible, horrible job they did, and it's not these people's fault. It's not the job and the duty of Patsy and John Ramsey to know what to do if this kind of stuff happens and it's a crime and all that. That's the duty and the job of the police officers and everybody in law enforcement, not these people here.
Watches a lot of movies.
Are you surprised that there are no swear words in it? I mean, if there is a huge degree of hatred for you.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
No, that is surprising. Nor is Jon Benet's name mentioned. All they say is, we have your daughter. They don't say we have Jon Benet.
Yeah, which makes me wonder, if it's someone that did not know us well enough to know what her name was.
But we've been told that there's a lot of movie talk in here. This person liked movies. They may have seen the movie Ransom, which was playing in Boulder
At the time.
And there were some similarities between Ransom and your life in terms of the profile of the people involved. The billionaire. Have you ever seen the movie Ransom?
No, I haven't seen the movie.
Okay.
So that blank stare that we got from John right now to the journalist was almost because he didn't understand the reference, or he kind of didn't quite get what the journalist was asking him and what she was saying. And it's because they don't watch a lot of movies, as I was saying before.
Yeah, I've been told that it's very similar. Apparently there's Clint Eastwood movie lines in this thing. We don't watch movies that much, so I was perplexed at why 118,000. Why not $1 million? I mean, why not? But there's
It's an
only
unusual
this
number.
madman knows why.
And of course, the supposition was that that was the amount of your bonus.
That was a supposition I put forward early on as I looked back to try to figure out what that number meant. I offered that up.
So after the journalist was done asking the question about the movie, and John says, well, we don't really ask any movies or anything, and then he looked down and then he started to gather his thoughts to continue to answer. The journalist kind of gave a airy laugh, like, you know, because she was laughing because they don't watch movies and because he was sitting there saying that they don't watch movies. And right now, what Mr. Ramsey is saying is correct. Why didn't they ask for a ton of money? Because he was worth more money than that and he had more money than that. So it's because I believe that the crime was sexually motivated. It was probably more sexually motivated or only motivated for that, you know, and it wasn't, the motivation wasn't so much the money and the ransom because of the way that it happened and everything, but I'm not going to go into all that. And that might be what they believe as well. They might believe that as well. Because if it was them that did it, and if you are somebody who believes that, then why the sexual molestation of Jon Benet? There are a lot of people who just kill kids and don't do anything with them in that way. They don't sexually do something with the kid. So, and they just kill the kid and they just leave or whatever. And then you just never find out who the killer was or whatever. But why do that? Why would the parents do that if it was them? They could have just killed and made it look like somebody who came to kill him by.
To the police and said this possibly could be the case. I don't know that it was. Who knows? I mean, only the killer knows, and this is a deranged individual.
Mrs. Ramsey, how many times did you have to write and read this note?
Oh, I think I gave 5 or 6 handwriting samples.
And they were extensive. We wrote and rewrote this note, which is terribly
Right-handed,
painful.
left-handed, with different pens, different, angles, everything.
Did they ask you to read the note?
The body language that we just got from Patsy just now, when she said different angles and she started to sort of bounce around a little bit there, was because she was tired of doing that. So all of the different handwriting samples that they were asking her for, she was getting sick and tired of it, basically. It was wearing her out to have to continue to do this for them.
No, when the test was administered, they would verbally dictate what I was to write, and it was rather fast, so you didn't have time, I guess, to try to think about how you were making your letters. You just had to write as you always write to keep up.
What do you think happened in your version of when the intruder broke in, how the intruder broke in, when the intruder wrote the ransom note, and when the intruder kidnapped Jon Benet? And do you think that the intruder wanted to actually take her out of the house, was actually going to...
So that slow movement of the head when Patsy was listening, and then she moves her head forward as if to say, yes, I hear what you said there. And then the journalist asks one more question and puts something else in there for her to answer, and then she nods her head again forward, yes, again. It's slowly soaking up every bit of information that the journalist is asking, because the journalist is asking a whole bunch of questions and asking Patsy to answer all those questions in just one or two or whatever straight paragraphs. So that slow forward nodding and kind of bowing of the head that Patsy is doing, and she does it one time for each time that the journalist asks a question, is to slowly intake all that information and to try to remember each question and then answer it in turn.
We've been told by seasoned investigators that this is what it appeared. It is what it appeared. It was an attempted kidnapping. Something went very badly wrong. We believe that the killer was in the house when we came home. We believe the note was written before Jon Benet was killed. whether it was before we got home or after we went to bed, we don't know. I have strong reason to believe that the killer either entered or left the house through the basement window that we found open, and we found a hard Samsonite suitcase flush up against the wall as if it were a step to get out of the window. The window was probably 5 feet off the floor, so you had to step on something to get out. That's my best guess at how at least they got out. They would have needed the suitcase to get out of that window.
How do you think they were going to get her out of the house, or he?
We've been told that the suitcase may have been involved.
Okay.
And he couldn't stand to answer that, and he couldn't stand to answer that particular question, because I saw a look of sort of almost like, he just he did not want to answer that. That made him very, I don't know if it's uncomfortable or something, and he kind of has a little bit of the aftermath of that face on right now as we're looking at him.
Take a short break here, switch teams. What eliminates you as suspects?
I don't know if anything eliminates us. I don't know that we'll ever be able to prove our innocence. First of all, we shouldn't have to prove our innocence. One of the things we've lost in this society, I believe, is the presumption of innocence. We've been told by the police, prove to us you're innocent and we'll be the first to say it. And we were aghast at that kind of a statement. But we've lost that in this country. But the fact of the matter is, the only thing that will prove our innocence is when we find the killer. Mm-hmm. And there's still going to be 10% of the population that says, oh yeah, but I don't believe that. They still are the guilty ones. There are still people on the web who believe Charles Lindbergh killed his child.
I think that the bit of I don't want to call it a smile, but a bit of the pulling back of the lips this entire time that John is talking is almost like, I'm so tired of this that I am just trying to move on from the way that people think about us, and we are trying to do the best to not only protect ourselves as a family legally, but to try to find the killer of our daughter.
And that the whole trial was a hoax. So we're never going to convince the cynics of anything. But that doesn't matter. Proving our innocence isn't important. Never has been.
Finding
what is
the
important
killer
is finding the killer of our daughter.
Do you think that'll happen?
Absolutely.
Yes, I do.
Why, Mrs. Ramsey?
Because Lou Smith, who is experienced, is a truthful, ethical man, looked me straight in the eye and said, we're going to get him. We're going to find him. And I'm holding out hope for that.
Mrs. Ramsey,
That her smile was very sad. That was a very sad sort of ending of her smile there when the smile ended. And, Lou Smith was a good detective, and I'm not sure if any of you guys probably are familiar with Lou Smith. And I'm not sure what your opinions or whatever are on him, but I think that he died short while after he went and investigated the Ramseys, or he did this private sort of detective work with them. And he said that he did believe very deeply that it was an intruder, and then he died. So we don't know. Sometimes, as far as I have seen, people will sometimes, not always, but this can work this way in life, that somebody will die after they do something very important, after they've lived their life, and they're older, and whatever you want to say, but it just ends up to be like that. So it could have been something like that. He that could have been one of his best works in his life, to be able to complete that and to say, well, I did this investigation and whatever, and this is what I found. because he found out many different things that were just ridiculous, that no one should ever have to go through when losing a child. You know, he found some kind of things that the police and all the different crime scene investigators should have found long time ago, you know, when the crime first happened. And it was things like, you know, the police officers or the, you know, crime scene investigators or whoever said that no one could have fit through the grate, which is in the side of the Ramsey's house. No one could fit through that grate in the ground, and could fit also through the window and go down to the basement and do that and get out also through the basement window in the grate. Yes, and then yes, they could, because this detective that Patsy Ramsey is mentioning right now, Lou Smith, he did it himself. He demonstrated it physically and went down into the basement through the grate in the window. So it's just different things like that, you know, and that weren't investigated properly and were just looked over, and just because they wanted to just zoom in and radar in with their envy to the Ramsey family.
If I could, tell me your version of what you think happened that night in terms of an intruder. And I know you've been over this 100 times, but if we could hear it from you, please.
Well, I think that when we left in the late afternoon to go to the Whites for dinner, that possibly this person was watching our house, watched us leave, and came into the house at that time. So there were it was a window of several hours of time where he could have familiarized himself with the house, where Jon Benet's bedroom was, where our bedroom was, where the basement was, you know, before we returned home. I believe that the ransom note was probably very likely written at that time. We had paper and pens all over the place, so they were available. And then I think the person...
Very good controlling of her body language here while she's answering all of this. Very good control she has here.
The person was there when we returned home that night.
And the ransom note was already written.
I believe it was. I mean, it's very unusual for a ransom note to be this long. From what we understand...
So again, for what I had said before in the first video, the crinkling of her forehead in between her two eyebrows there above her nose goes along with what she just said when she said, yeah, I believe so, you know. That does seem like it would be logical, or it would fit right in. Yes, I do believe so.
From professionals we've talked with, that after someone commits such a crime as this, they, you know, get the heck out of there. So.
We've also been told by experienced people that not even a serial killer could sit down and write a 3-page ransom note after they've killed.
And why would that be?
I don't know.
I don't know that.
But I think it's because this is an emotional climax for them, and to sit down and write what probably took a while, because it obviously was written to attempt to disguise the handwriting, a 3-page note, which I think this is either the longest or the second longest ransom note in the history of this country. That couldn't have been done after just...
So John has no problem with saying that and disclosing what he's heard about the ransom note in this way to the journalist, because, you know, they didn't do this. So they are, you know, when you think that they wouldn't disclose things that make them look guilty, yeah, they say it. They say, hey, this looks like this was written after they killed our daughter. It wasn't written before. It was written after she was killed. You know, and they say certain things that you think that they're guilty for, but it's like they say it themselves because they're not freaking guilty. It's like somebody who is naive and trusting, and because they're trusting, they trust other people and they just say whatever, or they do whatever, and they're just so naive and trusting. And there are a lot of evil people out there, and unfortunately they came into contact with with very evil person, or even more than one person, because I believe it was more than one person, most likely, that planned this and or did this. There are a lot of evil people and evil souls out there who prey on people who are very trusting. And that was their mistake.
Murdering a child by anyone, we're told.
Talk to us a little bit about that, Mrs.
Because it also a lot of times is not the person who was a stranger to you. A lot of times these things happen and it was a person who you trusted very well. So that's where the Santa Claus, Bill McReynolds, fits in with his wife. But then on these complete strangers and the suspect, Helgoth, fits right in, Michael Helgoth.
Ramsey, your child's been killed brutally, and then someone writes out this ransom note. Why do you think that that's not feasible? Why do you think it was written before?
Because I have been told by people who are experienced in this field that that is usually the way it happens. I have no previous knowledge about.
So she is answering in the affirmative and correctly to what I just said about John, which is that they answer this and they say, hey, listen, people who know about these type of things, people who are, either criminal investigators or whatever they are, they tell us that the ransom note had to be written after our daughter was killed and not before. We don't know anything about this because that's not our mind and that's not how we live our lives. And the people who are criminals and do this type of stuff, that's what they are telling us. They told us, that the person would write this afterwards. So it's kind of like they are being told this, and they don't have a problem with saying that because they didn't do anything wrong. And they don't, and it's just like I said before, they haven't really encountered any big crime or anything in their life or in their little towns or whatever that they've lived in or in their personal life. So they didn't know what to think about any of this when it happened.
These kind of things. But we have been, in conversation and in
We think about this every day.
every day. And we've sought out, the top people in the field that know about how the criminal mind works. And this is what we're going on. The profile that's in the book, all of that information is not from John and from me. This is from people that know what they're doing.
The intruder took your daughter downstairs and could not get her out of the house. Is that what you suspect?
That is what we've been told is a likely scenario by experienced investigators. Yes.
Well, someone also said that typically the body is left in the house if the perpetrator doesn't have any place to take the person.
And what
to
does that
hold
mean
them.
to you?
Well, I'm not sure what that means other than that, he didn't want to take.
So again, we have the wrinkling of the forehead to say, well, that's what we were told, or yeah, that's what I think, And then she is looking to the left and now answering this next question that the journalist has for her, as to why or whatever. And then she's saying
The body home with him or in his car, or I'm not sure what that means other than that, he didn't want to take the body home with him or.
So the reason why she's looking to the left there and then saying that and answering in that way is because she is not the guilty party. So she's trying to sort of maybe imagine, because she's not looking to the right to access her memory. She's looking to the left to kind of maybe imagine or try to think of why. And then she answers and says maybe they wanted to take the body with them, or they don't want to take the body, or whatever she says.
His car or wherever, so she was left in the house.
How is it that you are able to sit here and talk about the body and it's your daughter?
I have to kind of put it in a clinical perspective rather than emotionally when I can, to talk about it like this.
We have a strong faith, and our Christian faith assures us that Jon Benet is safe. She's in God's arms, in God's care, and we believe that. We know that. That's our belief, and that's our hope.
What about your daughter?
So the reason why he had that is because he was trying to find the right words that he felt were good enough to bring out an answer with.
Beth and your daughter, Jon Benet. What do you hope?
I know I will see them again. That's what I know. And I believe that, and I look forward to it.
Mrs. Ramsey?
Jon Benet used to say, we talked to Jon Benet about Beth. Of course, she was just an infant when Beth was killed in the automobile accident. I remember one time holding her on my lap in an airplane, and she looked out at all the puffy clouds out the airplane window, and she said, "Mommy, which cloud is Beth on?" And I took that opportunity to explain to her about God and about heaven and where we go, and we're...
So when Patsy gave that huge open mouth smile, and when she said, "Mommy, which cloud is Beth on?" and then she had a very open, wide mouth, is because she was very proud of her daughter and very happy that her daughter understood the concept of heaven and God and everything like that, because, she actually is a religious person, Patsy.
we die, and that we would all see Beth again, and then that we would know where she is. So I believe Beth was there to greet Jon Benet when she crossed over into heaven.
So again, we see that that eye that's smaller than the other. It's the eye that we see on the right, and it's Patsy's left eye would be her left eye for her, and would be the right eye that we're looking at. We saw that, like we saw in the first part of my analysis videos, how that gets smaller as certain things that she answers or certain things that she talks about. And that's very interesting to see. That might be something that, maybe she's dwelling or thinking about that a lot as she's answering it, or maybe it might bring up a lot of emotion.
Mrs. Ramsey, if you thought your husband had killed your daughter, finish that sentence.
We wouldn't be sitting here having this interview right now. He would be behind bars.
Mr. Ramsey?
The police asked that question of me. They said, hypothetically, if Patsy did it, or you thought she did it, would you turn her in? And I had to think about it, because I was like, I never even thought about that. Because I tried to give him a thoughtful answer, and I thought, and I said, yes, I would. Absolutely.
You turn her in?
Yes. Without question. Your love for a child is unconditional. Your love for a spouse is conditional. And there's no question. I mean, I would do anything to protect my children.
So they both answered that pretty quickly, pretty clearly. I do believe that is accurate for them, and it is true.
It's instinctive.
Just very briefly, if we could talk about the stun gun and the possibility of exhumation. And you said you did not want to do that because...
Well, it was brought up early on when we learned that a stun gun was involved, and I was asked by our investigators. They said if this needs to be done fairly soon, or the opportunity to do so will be gone, it would be possibly helpful, possibly not. And I just could not bring myself to say, yeah, let's do that. I mean, my child was at rest. She was at peace. We'd laid her to rest. And I couldn't bear the thought of that.
Even if it meant helping to find the killer?
I wasn't convinced that it was conclusively going to help.
They have photographs.
So this, so what he is saying is true, and it are his feelings. He didn't want to go ahead and have to dig Jon Benet's grave back up to look at the stun gun marks or what could be stun gun on her, neck or on her body, because to him it was only a possibility of it might help to find the killer, and it might not. So it's almost like a pregnant woman and her husband being told, something's wrong with your baby, and if we do this invasive procedure and like stick a needle your through your wife's stomach, and it might kill the baby, or it might give the baby some problems, birth defects or something, or it might not. And it's kind of like you go, wait a minute, no, then I don't want to take that risk if it might and might not. So that's the sort of situation. You can compare that almost like this scenario of what John is talking about. It's like it might or it might not. No, I'm not going to exhume my daughter's body for that. We've been through enough with all of this, and it's just too much.
They have
Experts
they have
said
enough that
this is
they
very,
know.
very compelling.
Yeah.
Dr. Doberson, I think in Colorado, who's a leading expert on stun gun wounds, has viewed this and said it's very compelling.
If you thought it was anyone in your family, that person would be reported immediately?
Absolutely. Without question. How could you not do that? I mean, it's beyond human comprehension to not do that.
What is it that you were actively...
Okay, so when John started to answer the question, when the journalist said, if it was anyone in your family, would you report them, or would you, tell on them to the police and turn them in? And John, answered absolutely, and of course. And then when he started to sort of readjust himself and sort of sit up in a way in the seat, and then, sort of kind of adjust himself, bring out his chest a little bit, and then come back into the sitting position that he was in before. That was kind of like, and then he had a sort of smirk or something on his face as he asked that to me, and the eyes were squinched together. It's kind of says, what a ridiculous question. Yes, of course we would. This is our daughter, and we care about our kids more than we care about protecting anyone else. So that was the readjusting of the body there to me. And then when he looked down and he sort of took a gulp, I think that he was readjusting his emotions, because he was going to have almost like, when you stop yourself from crying. You stop that emotion there as best as you can. And I want to know, I'm just curious to know, did investigators or police officers or anyone ever try to find out if any of these people who were suspects in this case know of each other in any way? Do they know each other in any way? For example, is there any way that Bill McReynolds may have known Michael Helgoth, or perhaps, Gary Merriman knew Gary Olivia? I mean, did they even check for things like that, whether the suspects knew each other in any way and could have cohorted or contorted or whatever together to try to do this?
Trying to find the killer. What is it you're doing? So you're working with your attorneys.
Well, no, our attorneys we're not working with our attorneys. We have both paid and volunteer people that are working on this full time. We don't want to say a whole lot about what we're doing, because this kind of investigation should not be a public event, as it has been for the last 3 years. But I can assure you that we are looking, and we're looking hard. We're going to do everything we can. We can't do it all. We're going to do as much as a private citizen can do. Ultimately, we need someone that has the authority of the state with a badge to finish the job.
So that kind of reiterates and goes back to what I said before, which was that if the police officers who show up at the scene of the crime when it happened, and not, you know, a month later or a week later or whatever, you know, when it's fresh, when it happened, when everything's still there, then if you can't trust that, and you can't trust any law officials or any crime scene investigators who would come in, because everybody's just focused on trying to point it on you as the parents, then who the hell can you trust? Because it's not like the people who you would hire later on to help you, or to give you the help that they could, like attorneys or, you know, private detectives or anything. It's not like they could have helped you in the way that the police department or whoever else had the authority, like John is saying, to go in there and actually collect evidence and do different things like that.
Because there are certain restrictions that you cannot.
There's certain things we just can't do. We can't subpoena information. We can't demand that people talk to us. We're going to do the best we can and everything we can, but and we're hopeful that we're going to get a huge leap forward when we get that tip that we've been waiting for.
And this is a tip that you hope will come into you and your people?
I don't care where it comes. We've asked people to call us, call the Boulder Police, call your local police, call the FBI. All we hope is that whoever they call is receptive enough to listen. See, the person that calls is probably or possibly not going to be who you expect to call or who you want to call.
What do you mean?
Well, we've seen a number of calls come in where the response has been, well, they're just strange people. You know, they can't be taken credibly. You have to listen to every call.
So what he's saying is absolutely right. It goes back to what I was saying about, you know, if you are a police officer or investigator in these types of crimes, you don't want to leave any stone unturned, because the stone that is not turned around and you don't look at may be that stone that had the answer for you. So they went through this entire case and through this entire procedure, leaving many stones unturned. And that was wrong as them, just as regular human beings, to do that with the position that they were in and the career that they had, to try and help people like these people here, the Ramseys.
This person may be very credible. They may appear to be very uncredible. Certainly if they're a friend of this creature, they're going to be a bit odd themselves.
What do you call him, this creature?
Because I don't think he's a human being. This is a subhuman. This person is a monster. How could you kill a beautiful, defenseless 6-year-old child on Christmas Day? That's a monster. That's not I will not give this person the credit of calling them a human being.
Mrs. Ramsey, do you want to hurt this person?
I don't want to hurt anyone. I just want to find this person, get them off the streets, know that they're never going to have the ability or...
So again, we see the crinkling or the fold in between the eyebrows above the nose of the bridge. And in this case, we see that because she's trying to convey with her face, or she is conveying with her face, that, you know, I'm just so tired of all of this that I would just want to get to the root of what's important to me, and that is who took my daughter's existence. And that is what I want. It's because I'm really just, everything else is just wasting time to me. That's what that fold in between her eyebrows says.
Opportunity to do to some other child what was done to Jon Benet.
This book, The Death of Innocence, your picture's on the cover. Why your picture and not your daughter's on the cover?
This is our story. I mean, there have been, I think this is now the 10th book, I'm understanding, that has been written about this case. You know, we are...
And I agree with Patsy saying there that this is their story, because the police never were for their daughter. If the police and everyone who was involved and everyone who had the power to investigate the crime scene, investigate the suspects, and do everything that they should have done correctly the first time. If every one of those people were for Jon Benet, then we wouldn't be sitting here in this situation where they've been scrutinizing the parents and blaming the parents the whole time. So this book should have been titled the way that it was titled. And I agree with Patsy on that, because they were what the case was about, and the police made sure of that. They didn't care about Jon Benet and finding the real true killer.
We're the only ones that know what has happened to us since Jon Benet's death. No one else. This is a story only we can tell.
I was even a bit uncomfortable putting her picture on the back.
Why is that?
I don't want to violate her privacy any more than it's been violated. But we wanted people to read the book and get to know the real Jon Benet. Jon Benet was not a 6-year-old beauty queen as she's been characterized in the media. She was a wonderful child. We knew.
And again, we saw that he starts to sit up a bit and adjust himself, and maybe he might even be pulling on the openings of his coat jacket or of his suit jacket there. He might even be pulling on the openings in the front a little bit to readjust his sitting. And it is because he feels that it is very misunderstood and mistaken, and mistaken as in mistaken information that his daughter Jon Benet was this, beauty queen, and that's how she should be remembered and everything, because she was a normal little girl, and she had a life, and she wasn't an object for somebody to come and commit this atrocious act upon and to take her away from everyone.
She'd be special. She took dancing lessons, tap dance lessons, acting lessons. She was learning to play the violin. She took piano lessons. We had her signed up to take rock climbing lessons. She did a lot of things. She was a ball of energy. And we knew that she was going to be very special in this world someday. We had no idea she was going to be special this way.
And how is that?
Her name's known around the world. I think people saw her as a real child because of the videos and she wasn't a statistic. There's been over 1,000 children murdered in this country since Jon Benet was murdered. I don't think the average person could name one of them. And that's tragic. That's horribly tragic. But for some reason, Jon Benet's name became known around the world.
I think there were probably a lot of factors that fed into it. The availability of the videotapes from the pageants and the photographs that were, sold, enabled the public to know her more than just, one little school snapshot picture that we normally may see if a child is killed in this country. And then I think compounding on top of that, they started.
So she looks to Jon to kind of say, is this what you believe too? Or I think this is, what both of us think. And then she looks back to the camera to finish what she's saying. Now, I want to say that none of the critics of the Ramseys can answer, none of the critics who think that they might have done something like this to their daughter and who are guilty in some way, none of these people can answer any detailed or intimate questions about the Ramseys. So, for example, if you ask them something like, well, what did Patsy do for her 14th birthday? These people wouldn't be able to give you an answer because they're just strangers to the Ramseys. Just like the Ramseys are strangers to you and I, these people are strangers for the Ramseys, and the Ramseys are strangers for them. They just like to think that they know these people, but obviously at the end of the day, and in reality, they don't. They don't know anything about these people, and they've never met them in person. They've never been their friend, neighbors, anything like that, never even spoke one word to them. So if you ask them, what John Ramsey's favorite color was or something like that, or what the name of Burke Ramsey's third grade teacher or something was, they couldn't give you a valid and undeniable answer. And it's because, like I said in the first video, You can't try to pretend that you know someone or try to judge them for how they grieve or how they act or anything, because you're not a part of their family. And no matter how much you might act like you are or think that you are or have this fantasy that you know Jon Benet and all this other stuff, just the same way the Ramseys themselves, they cannot tell you about yourself because they don't know you either. They can't tell what your favorite color is or guess any information about you. Because if you don't know someone, then you just don't know them, period. You've never met them in life in person. You've never stood in front of their face to face, none of that. And none of the people actually who did know the Ramseys and were close to them, none of those people ever suspected the Ramseys of doing this to their daughter. Never. And they still don't to this day.
Spinning us into this, real life JR, or, some mean, rich, horribly abusive parents. And all of a sudden it was a real life soap opera. And it just kept spinning and spinning and spinning.
And where is it now?
At this point, we want to get the investigation back in full swing. I mean, to my knowledge, look at all the people that have gone down the drain in the police department. Everyone who knew anything about this case, from Steve Thomas to Linda Arndt, and everyone in between, are gone. They've folded, closed their cards, and headed home. So there's no one, to my knowledge, working on this case as we speak, except our people.
The governor made
So all of those different head nods and different, bringing the head forward and the body forward for Patsy that we just saw right there was because she was subconsciously trying to reiterate what she was saying, and felt like, she has answered these questions before, either in this interview or other interviews. So she tries to make it very clear and a statement that's very, the way that she feels.
a direct statement to you when he decided not to have a special prosecutor. What would you like to say directly to him about an investigation?
Well, first of all, we'd be happy to meet. I emphasize the word "we" just in case there's any confusion on that. But we'd like to meet to encourage you to put a robust, qualified, objective, competent team of investigators together. Go back to the beginning. Go through all the leads that haven't been followed up, and let's find the killer. I don't care about anything else.
So once again, he is verbally making the point that they were incompetent, and he would like to meet with this man or person, and he would be interested in this man or person getting together a competent team and people who were professional, because what he's trying to say as kindly as he can is that they weren't competent, and maybe they could do this all over again, and maybe we could get it done right this time.
Do you want to talk to him, both of you, as a publicity ploy?
No.
We don't want publicity. We want to find the killer of our child. That is all.
We've been accused of liking the publicity.
But Patsy just, I just feel so horrible when she goes, that is all we want. We just want to be able to find the killer of our child. It's just, feels like she just keeps having to repeat herself in every interview that they give her, and keeps saying this over and over again. And she just feels like no one is listening to her, because they really essentially weren't listening to these people, to the parents. And she feels like she's not being heard, she's not being taken seriously, and that was that frustration that we heard in her voice, that she felt like she has to keep on repeating that same information, everywhere that she goes to talk about this.
Hate the publicity. Our privacy is non-existent. We didn't choose this role. I would give anything to go back to my normal family with Jon Benet in our household. This is not pleasant for us.
The videotapes Is it my understanding that they were bought up by someone and then sold to the media?
That's my understanding. These videotapes were taken at these functions, which were usually on a Sunday afternoon with families in attendance, so that the mother and dad could sit and enjoy the program rather than have to be fussing with the camera all the time. So then these tapes were made available at a very nominal price, you know, that you could buy and take home and have. Then they became, you know, people right away started seeing that they could make a buck, you know, on all of this. So all this stuff was offered up, you know, for a price to the tabloids and to news stations.
So all of that she is saying is accurate, and she knows this because she may have purchased the tape herself from these pageants, and this person or whoever was filming the kids while they were at this pageant. And the reason that she looked over at John as she is speaking and answering right now is because he almost seemed as if, you know, it almost seemed as if he was going to cut in and say something there if you'd pay attention to his breathing. So that was just a quick look of, you know, are you going to say something? Are you going to say something about this? And then she continued to get what she wanted to say out because he stopped himself from saying anything.
Et cetera, et cetera. And I think one of the tabloid reporters somehow got all the rights to all of the videotapes, and he's, you know, every time something is run, he gets a little, you know, royalty on it. Just sickening.
Yeah, it's sickening. I mean, there are people.
So that look that she just had on her face is a sickened look. It's a look that she feels that it's so ridiculous and it's so unfair to her and her family and to Jon Benet, which is accurate. It is sickening and unfair and unruly and unjust and all of that.
People we know of, for example, in Charlottesville, who were approached, our little community in Michigan where we go for the summer sometimes, and they refused. So we're not going.
And I want to say, and the reason why it is sickening and disgusting and unfair is because they don't receive fair treatment, and their daughter's murder doesn't receive a fair investigation and, you know, fair judgment and looking over in a correct, thorough way, because everyone now in the entire world thinks that they know these people intimately and thinks that and just wants to focus right in on pictures of Jon Benet and beauty pageants with makeup on and everything, and just forget that she was, like her father said, a normal little girl.
Make money on the death of this child who was our friend. There were families that were offered a lot of money for photos. There were little girls, Jon Benet's little friends, her little 14-year-old babysitter who was a friend of the family as well, was offered $700 a piece for any photo she could produce of Jon Benet, and she turned them down.
There still are
Because
people
she had
around
principles.
with integrity.
But there are people that don't have
So that goes right along with what I've said in the first part of this body language analysis, in the first video, that their integrity and their dignity and things like that are very important to them. And so even their friends are like that, because birds of a feather flock together. Once again, the way that your friends are is most likely, you know, the way that you will be. So their friend said, hell no, we're not going to sell these pictures of Jon Benet for any amount of money to you. Because the Ramseys, like I said, the integrity, the dignity, the esteem and everything is very important to them in life, and is also important to their friends and the people around them, surrounding them.
integrity. And sadly, we were around some of those, I guess.
Mrs. Ramsey, when was the last time you saw your daughter alive?
When I tucked her into bed, 25th of December.
And what did she say?
She was
Oh, that's
asleep.
right, she was asleep.
Sound asleep.
Mr. Ramsey?
The same. And when I carried her upstairs and laid her in bed.
Knowing what you know now.
So Patsy did not hesitate on, first of all, they just mentioned that I was mentioning that their friends did not sell the pictures of Jon Benet and did not sell their integrity like that and kept their integrity. But then John said that there were also some people around them, or some people who might have had dealings with them that had Jon Benet's pictures, who did sell the pictures of her to tabloids or whoever else, and didn't have any integrity. But the question that the journalist just asked Patsy about, what did you say to Jon Benet that night or whatever before you put her in a room or whatever she just said to Patsy, I don't know if that was a trick question, and I don't think it was to ask Patsy that. But it's like the parents said. These parents said that their child was asleep and that they carried the child to bed and put Jon Benet in the bed. So to ask what, you said to Jon Benet that night or whatever, might have just been a slip of a question, and Patsy got it right just immediately, because there is no trying to slip out a answer from her that, she may tell on herself or something like that. It's not going to happen because they're not the killer of their daughter.
If you could change any part of the investigation after your daughter's death, what would it be, or what would you do differently?
I wish I would have demanded that more resources be brought to bear. We assumed the FBI was involved. They weren't. They were, in fact, refused involvement. We assumed that the police were doing everything they could to find the killer, and that wasn't being done. And if I will fault the Boulder Police for one thing, it's that they refused help in the beginning for people who knew what they were doing.
We understand that there was a request made that morning for bloodhounds, and it was denied by someone in the Boulder Police Department. I mean, that should have been done immediately.
Are you aware Denver Police offered assistance?
Yes. And they were refused.
They refused.
And if I had to do it over again, I would have been more aggressive on demanding that the FBI be involved, that the Denver Police be involved, that that we not just rely on what turned out to be inexperienced police.
So a lot of pride of different men in the involvement of this situation, and the reason why they didn't get any answer to this case and didn't get it solved because of what John and Patsy are describing right now, which is the Boulder Police Department and whoever else was involved in this case not wanting to accept outside help, not wanting from somebody from another county or state or whatever to come in and help them with what they were doing, or another department or something from somewhere else to come in and help them with what they were doing. Just pride of men and wanting to feel like they could handle it and that they knew what they were doing and they had an answer regardless of what anybody else felt. They knew that the Ramseys were guilty.
Inexperienced and biased police to do what we thought should be done.
What's the most important question anyone can ask you that would prove your innocence, help people open their minds? Is there any question that can be asked?
Well, again, we shouldn't have to prove our innocence, but...
So he's always going to have the same answer for this question, because this is really the only answer. They shouldn't have to prove their innocence, and especially not from the very beginning when this first happened. That's ridiculous, isn't it? You are innocent until proven guilty, because in this case they were guilty until proven innocent. And it seems like, even when they were exonerated and were shown that they were clear through DNA evidence, it seems like they still were guilty. They still weren't proven innocent, in the court of public opinions. So he's always going to have this answer, that we shouldn't have to prove ourselves, and we're not interested in proving ourselves. And he's always going to shake his head no to the left and right when he answers this question, because that's not their interest anymore. Their interest is to find the killer of their daughter, and it always has been. They did have a little bit of an interest of, trying to prove that they didn't do anything or whatever, but that was only because of, all of the sort of evil work of the police and everything, focusing in only on them and not trying to find the person who actually harmed this little girl.
We've been cast that lot. Why do you think we killed our daughter? Tell me why. Tell me what we've done, what evidence you have, other than we were asleep.
That's very true. Tell me why. Why is it? Because you see her in beauty pageants? So now every beauty pageant, all the parents have all killed their children? How come all these beauty pageant children aren't dead? If they just have a pattern of killing your children because they were in beauty pageants and you just saw beauty pageant kids, so you go, terrible, terrible parents. So all of them must be terrible then. We can't single out the Ramseys. It has to be that every single parent of a beauty pageant child is all terrible and they all, could murder their kids and they all got these horrible evil spirits to them and all that. Just because that's not your life and just because, your parents didn't put you in beauty pageants and they're not Southern and that's not the way they live their life and have that Southern sort of lifestyle and everything, doesn't mean that you can go around judging them, because everyone in the world lives differently. No one has to live exactly like you, and billions upon billions of people on earth were not born to live exactly how you were raised. Sorry.
In the home that night, there is no other evidence. There is no other reason.
We've been investigated more than anyone else in the history of this country for the past 3.5 years. They know everyone we've ever gone to school with, everything about us. And there's nothing that shows that we are the type of people that would do something like this to a child. It's not there.
What did you want for Beth and Jon Benet as kids that grew up to be adults? What did you want for them?
I wanted the world for them. I wanted to give them the world. The world is their oyster. Jon Benet, I wanted to grow up and be happy, to be a mom like me, to have a little girl like her someday. That's what I wanted.
Mr. Ramsey?
I used to think about that as a father of 3 daughters. How would I like my daughter to? Who would I like her to marry and take as a maid? And what I realized was that what was most important was that she be happy, and that she loved this person and this person loved her. Beyond that, it didn't matter. It didn't matter if they were rich or poor or what. But if they loved each other and they were happy, that's what I wanted for my child.
In a sense, up until Beth's death, you all have lived the American dream. Self-made, made a lot of money in the computer industry, happily married, with children. Tell us about that.
Well, in this country, we're so proud.
When the journalist was saying all of that to John, I felt like he was envisioning it and it was going before his head, and certain pictures are going before his head of his life. And that's very true. What the journalist said is that you had the American dream up until, this happened to your daughter Beth, and then this other horrible thing happened to your daughter Jon Benet.
Proud of that anyone, from any walk of life can achieve the American dream. I mean, I came from a normal American family in West Virginia, not a wealthy family, a comfortable family. Same with John. He grew up in Nebraska and
So them saying, anyone can achieve the American dream, and we worked our way up, and we weren't wealthy from the start, with our own parents growing up, is kind of like what I said in the first part, and in the first interview, the first part of the interview in the first video that I did, and it's kind of like when I said they were opening their house to people and letting people come in and see, how their life was, and letting people into their lives and trusting of people and everything. And it's not because they were conceited and were trying to show off the things that they had and the way they lived. It's because they weren't conceited. They were the opposite. It kind of goes back to me saying, that they felt like if they had these things, that they could maybe give others hope that they could have these things, that, hey, you could have these things as well. Because they did feel like they were the American dream and working their way up from having nothing or having a middle class sort of life. That goes right along with what I said. So,
Michigan, not a wealthy family. And what we have achieved, we were educated in this country. worked hard, darn hard, to get, where we were, and to achieve the success that we may have enjoyed. But suddenly, when somebody achieves that American dream that we're so proud of, we're the first to knock the feet out from under them. We say, we don't like that after they've achieved the dream and we haven't. We don't like that. And
So I feel like what Patsy is saying is correct. We all know that that's correct. People only want happiness and success and lots of money and stuff if it's for themselves, and they don't want to see other people that they personally know, their friends or anything like that, become more successful than them. Whatever you may deem success, a happy family, a lot of money, whatever. They don't want to see their friends or other people like that and have more of that than they do. So that is correct. And I do believe that the Ramseys, and especially Patsy in particular, learned that or came to the realization of that only after this horrible thing happened to Jon Benet.
we've been persecuted probably more because of that than if we'd been, something else.
When you started out with your business in the basement, what were you making a year? Do you remember?
I remember the first year, I think I made $18,000 that year. And this
How'd
was
you survive?
It was tough. There were times when I just didn't have money. I had to borrow money from my dad to buy Patsy an engagement ring.
So all of that is accurate and true, what he is saying. And, once again, I will say, and I know that I said it too much in the first video, so I'll only say it this time. He did look to the right when he said that, and he also looked down because he wasn't so proud, obviously, as a man of having to ask his father-in-law, Patsy's father, for the loan on trying to take care of his business problems or whatever. He wasn't necessarily proud of that, so he looks down instead of up, and he looked to the right, which means he's accessing the left part of the brain, which is for facts and logic and things, remembering things that actually did happen in a matter of fact. Looking to the left means that you are trying to use your imagination to come up with something like a storytelling or something that's more imaginary like that, and to use that imagination as you are speaking. So, and these things I want you guys to go and test it on a child. Since children don't lie or don't usually lie and aren't programmed to lie, go and ask a child something that you know is true and pay attention and see if they look to the left or the right. And then ask a child something that you know may not be true, and that they would maybe make up, and see if they look to the left or right. Just try this and ask them different questions, use different scenarios or whatever, because you would know that child. I don't. And, ask children different questions about the different, that would cause them to make the different faces that we talk about here, that I talked to you guys about. So, for example, if a kid had to think of something and they agreed with it and they said, yeah, I think so, and made that little fold in between the eyebrows that I'm telling you guys to look at Patsy's face and see the fold in between the two eyebrows above the bridge of the nose, then do that with a child and see if they have the same type of reaction and go, well, yeah, I think so. I think Grandma did say that, or whatever it is. Test this on a child who can't lie. Okay, I want you guys to do that. And then comment below. Tell me about what it was that you learned or saw or observed.
But we thought we were okay. We
Why'd you go with this
kept gas in the car.
no potential?
People have asked me that, and I think the thing that I observed in John early on was that he was so kind to his children. He had 3 little kids when we started dating. And I remember after he'd asked me to marry him, my parents, talking to me and saying, now you understand that you're buying into a package deal here. There are 3 former children, and if they're, $10 left in the bank account, they're going to come first. We wanted you to understand, what you're buying into here. But he was so kind to those children. And, wherever we have been in the world in our 20 years of marriage, at a certain time every evening, he was on the phone to those children. And that means a lot, because I remember thinking to myself, he'll be a good dad. He'll be a great father to my children.
Let me just scan over this. Oh, one other thing I wanted to ask you about is lawsuits. Currently, who are you involved in lawsuits with in terms of libel?
We just recently announced the settlement of a case we had brought against the Star magazine. We're not under condition of the settlement.
So the reason why Patsy sort of began to close her mouth a little bit after the journalist went into asking about lawsuits, and Patsy heard that word lawsuit, was probably because they can't give out certain type of information, and she might have subconsciously been preparing herself not to say too much about that, I think. And I think that John is doing the same thing right now. I think actually what he says next sounds like it's going to go into him saying we can't really get into that for legal purposes.
Allowed to talk about it in terms of the amount or the conditions. That's the first of what will be many.
So again, we just saw him fold his lips very hard when he said and that would be equivalent to the same thing that Patsy just did, to sort of, think about the information that they're going to give next, because they can't say everything when it comes to legalities and everything of what the journalist is asking right now in lawsuits and everything.
I believe as we speak, our attorney's filing a suit today against the Globe tabloid. We're just getting started on that.
Oh, and the Inquirer, the National Enquirer? Anything?
Stand by, as Linwood would say.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
We have, we could keep a building of lawyers busy for 5 years with the amount of slander and libel that's been thrust on our family.
They have to be held accountable. It is just not, talk about...
And the reason why Patsy came in just there and said they have to be held accountable is because when John just said, we can keep it going for a long time with all of the different accusations and the different false things that we have on all these tabloids and everyone, and we can keep them in court for a while. Patsy came in and it sort of cut into that and said, and they have to answer for what they've done, because she doesn't want to seem like they're after them, they're going after tabloids and magazines for their money, or that they're so hurt that they have to run after everyone who's saying something about them, Star magazine, blah, blah, blah. But she wants to just kind of come in with the point of saying people have to be accountable for the bad character that they put over people, and they put these things out in the media that ruins people like us, that ruins the look of our character, which and causes us to look like people that we're not. So they have to be held accountable for that. It's not that we want to just sue everyone in sight.
Hiding behind things. The First Amendment, freedom of the right to free speech, has been, taken way out of context, and people should not be allowed to get by with the things that they have done and said to us. And if we don't fight it, what's going to happen to the next family? It's just uncalled for.
We're going to take a quick break, and should God let this happen to you?
I don't know. I'm sure he has a master plan that's underway. I think what it says right in the Bible, what man has meant for evil, God will use for good. I don't think God wanted this to happen. I think he cried right along with John and me when Jon Benet was killed. But he will use it in some way, make something good happen from this.
So when the journalist asked that kind of inappropriate question, why would God let this happen? Meaning, why would God let the murder of Jon Benet happen? You heard Patsy have a very verbal, you could hear it very loudly, a gulp down her throat. And I think that she did not expect that type of question to come from the journalist. And first of all, we all have what's called free agency. And free agency is our spirit, is our will to do what we please, and we can choose bad or good on this earth. And that has everything to do with us and not with God. He doesn't control us like a robot or like a puppet to go around and do different evils upon the earth.
What has this done to your marriage? In a lot of cases, statistics show that people break up when there's a child's death and it's violent.
Yeah, I've heard that, and based on our experience, I suspect that the reason for that is that you become very self-focused. This has happened to me. I'm devastated. I'm crushed. Poor me. And if you let that go too far, your spouse can't respond because she's feeling the same way, or he. And I think what Patsy and I have been able to do, first of all, when one of us is down, one of us has been up. That's been very, I don't know if it's coincidental, but it's made things work. And we've realized, I think, that we both suffered deeply, and that we can't sit back and pity ourselves individually.
So I was going to say that I think that he has been through this, and that Patsy has also been through this, and that's the reason kind of why he was looking down and to the right, and he had a kind of look that was a sort of gaze into space, as if he was picturing memories. And I was going to say that he might have experience with this as well as Patsy, as feeling like this happened to me, and why me, woe is me, and that you have to look at it a different way, and you have to understand the other person's pain, and that you're in this together, and that it is about your daughter, or whatever he's going to say next.
And I look at Patsy and I know how deeply she's suffered and hurt, because I know I've done the same. And that's really strengthened our love, I think. True love, real love.
We've had to lean on each other and our family and our friends, because it's been, us against the world, basically. Because for 3 years, the world's been told that we were the murderers.
Mr. Ramsey, what did you first hear that morning?
She's uncomfortable with saying that phrase, and so am I, that she was the murderer, or that we were the murderers. It came out in a very hard to deliver type of way from her mouth, and then she had to sort of clear her throat or whatever gently after she said it, and she doesn't want to say that people think that she's the murderer. She doesn't even want to say the words, And really, it's like I said, they have great control of their posture, and they have a lot of composure of their body language as well.
When Mrs. Ramsey went downstairs, how did you know something was wrong?
I just heard her scream my name, and I knew from the tone of it that something was drastically wrong.
If Jon Benet were alive today, what do you think? What would you be doing today? Or is that too cruel?
No. You can't think about that because it's not a possibility. But she'd be in school, laughing innocently with her friends. She'd be getting straight A's. She was a smart kid. But you can't.
Loving light.
So I saw his eyes brighten a bit as he was talking about Jon Benet and speaking about what she would be doing nowadays if she were alive. The way that we are looking at John, I saw the sparkle mostly in his left eye, and that's our left, how we are looking at him.
You can't think about that.
Yeah.
Does it bother you when people talk as though they know her when they never met her?
No, we're delighted when people care about our child. So it's a wonderful feeling. And that, you know, that you think about people that have lost children and haven't had that benefit. That's been very, very uplifting to us that other people love our child.
What kind of responses are you getting on your email from your book?
We've gotten some. I check it probably 3 times a day, and our investigators check it as well. We get surprisingly a lot of just communication. You know, I'm glad I found a way to tell you, and 9 out of 10 are either I wanted to tell you I believed in you and to hang in there, or
We're praying for you.
I
Or,
may have thought you were guilty, but after seeing more clearly what went on, I believe in your innocence. 1 out of 10 is off the deep end, hateful, violent, and a few are tips, interesting tips.
What are there any leads that you consider good leads from the money offered?
We have some great leads, absolutely, and we're pursuing them.
Can you talk about them?
not at this point.
We don't. All we want the killer to know is that we're stalking him, and you're not going to get rest. You're not going to get peace. Just beware. Beware.
So I felt a lot of energy coming from him when he said that just now, and after he finished his words, beware. The way that he looked just exuberated a lot of energy from the screen when I looked at that, and it's kind of a feeling that I can't really put into words in English or any other language. I don't think, because we haven't went through this. Fortunately, you know, hopefully nobody out there listening has went through something like this, so we can't put that feeling into words. So when he said that, I felt it.
Do you have the bedwetting issue, Mrs. Ramsey? We've heard you talk about that before, and on your stage 4 cancer, and comparing the two. What about the bedwetting with Jon Benet?
It was not an issue. I mean, I've said this before. All children have accidents. If she was especially tired when she went to bed and didn't go to the bathroom before she went to bed, she could have had an accident, you know.
So the way that Patsy just said that to me seemed like she's a very gentle mother, and that is just ridiculous to her, and that she just has to answer this all the time, and it is just so just taken away from who she really is to have to think this about her, how some people do, and accuse her of doing this because of a bedwetting incident, or getting really angry at Jon Benet over a bedwetting incident.
It was few and far between. It was not a big deal. All 4 of our other children had similar experiences. You know, that was made much too much of something
It's
of
nonsense.
nothing.
Absolute nonsense.
Few and far between means what?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I didn't keep track, you know. Not enough to be alarmed, enough to even speak to a doctor about it.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else that either one of you would like to add with regard to trying to find the killer and people who might be watching us? What do you want to say to them who might be able to help?
Please call. If you have any idea, no matter how far-fetched it is, call us, email us, write us, call the police, call Crime Stoppers, call your local police. Somebody knows who did this. They may not know they know it, but if they think about it, listen to...
So when he was shaking his head a little bit back and forth gently and saying, call Crime Stoppers, call the police, tell someone about it, or whatever he was saying, and each time he would shake his head gently, you know, to me that says, you know, do the obvious thing, do the things that anyone would do if they knew about a crime like this. Tell someone, call this and that person. That's what all of that head movement means to me.
what we've tried to convey. Think about the stun gun. Who do you know that owns a stun gun? Who do you know that owns an air taser stun gun, which is the brand we think that was used? Were they in Boulder, Colorado on December 25th, 1996? The garrote. Who have you ever seen demonstrate to you a garrote? A garrote used for strangling. This was a professional.
And what I did want to say about the garrote and the garrote is that that is a sexual act. So the killer, like I said before in this same video that I'm doing now, the killer might have been sort of motivated by that more so than the money. Whether he was completely motivated by that, or a little bit of the money, or however it goes, that garrote thing, the garrote and the rope and all that, and twisting of the controlling of the neck, breathing and twist and all that is sexual to me. So wanting to do that and then doing what they did to Jon Benet in that manner, that type of stuff, speaks for itself.
Tool. This wasn't an amateur device. Who do you know that's done that? Were they in Boulder, Colorado in December? Call us. Call the police.
We've listed a lot of this information in the book. There's an entire chapter devoted to nothing but who we think this murderer is. If you buy the book, read that chapter. If you can't buy the book, can't get a hold of a book, go to a bookstore and read that chapter. We want everyone to know that information.
So I wanted to say that not only, about the garrote and everything, but when they were speaking of the stun gun marks, and John was asking, who did you know that might have been in Colorado, or Boulder, Colorado specifically, around that time, the day after Christmas or on Christmas Day, that has a stun gun or may have access to a stun gun. And I do think one of you listeners can tell me below and correct me. Wasn't it either Michael Helgoth or Gary Olivia that had a stun gun? Please comment below, because I can't remember quite as much right now, but I know that there's something like that to this crime.
So that they can start thinking along with us, who this could be. Help us.
Okay. And only 3 more urban myth questions. The scream. Did you hear anything?
No.
Did not hear a thing.
Sadly, no.
You were on medication that night?
Yeah.
I had taken a melatonin tablet, which is supposed to help you sleep.
Mrs. Ramsey, the clothing. Boulder police were suspicious because you had your makeup on and you had the same clothing as you had worn the night before.
Mm-hmm.
When did you get dressed?
I got up in the morning, got dressed. I had, the night before, had put my pants and sweater and bra and, laid across the edge of the bathtub, and I picked it up the next morning and put it back on.
See, any parent that has taken early morning trips probably follows the same routine we did. We would get up, we'd get dressed, we'd get fully ready, we'd get the car loaded, and then we'd get the kids up. Quite often we get the kids up with their pajamas on and put them in the car.
Okay.
That's standard parent.
So it's like I said before, and I'll say it again. That's how these people live their lives. That's how the Ramseys live their everyday life. And not everybody has the same routine or behaves a certain, the same way or anything. So this is normal for them. So to judge them on this basis is wrong, because then we should just go around judging everyone for whatever the hell it is that they do in their daily routines or whatever.
101 travel, I think. That's how we always did it.
And one question that's unpleasant, and I'm sorry for asking this, but what is your understanding as far as a possible sexual assault?
I think that's inconclusive. I've been told that there was no penetration, and that what was previously thought to be semen is not. So.
Is there anything else either one of you would like to add?
Just help us if you're listening to this program and think you have information that can help, please help.
Really tasteless way, in my opinion, to close out the interview by asking the Ramseys about the sexual assault on their daughter. They could have ended it on a more happy note by asking Patsy the question that they asked her before, which was, what do you remember that was so wonderful and great and beautiful about your daughter? And Patsy said, I remember when she used to come up to me and flutter her eyelashes against my cheek. And, something like that would have ended on a better note than asking them about the sexual assault on Jon Benet. That was a really tasteless way to end the interview. But perhaps it's not Paula's fault, Paula Woodward. Perhaps it's the fault of the directors or whoever wanted that question to come in at the end, okay? Because these people don't want to go home and have that on their mind as the last question that they were asked about.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula.
Once again, thank you guys for watching. I do appreciate all of the support. You can follow me on Instagram, Crystal_Canali. Let's have a conversation below. Leave your comments. I respond to all or most comments as long as they're respectful, and in good taste. It takes some effort for me to be able to make a video because coming into interactions with other people on a daily basis and just experience, normal life, these things just come to me as intuition and thoughts and feelings. So to be able to put it into words is a different story, and to see that you guys support me for that, it gives me the motivation to continue making videos. So I appreciate all of that. I hope you guys are enjoying the holidays as we move into 2020 with your families. I do encourage you to visit a channel here on YouTube called True Crime Garage. As I was making the end of this video here, I discovered an episode called Santa Claus, and they have episodes in regards to Jon Benet Ramsey, and that is an episode in regards to her, and I do like to listen to them. They have interesting perspectives, and I think you guys should subscribe to their channel or at least check those videos out. Once again, I thank you all, and we will talk soon. Bye bye.